Hello, my name is Brenton Bostick, and today I will be talking about formatting the Wolfram language with some new technology that I've been working on for the past year or so. People might have attended my talks at the last Wolfram Technology Conference where I was talking about parsing and linting the Wolfram language, and this is an extension of that work and helping to enhance that work as well. And I see the three things of parsing and linting and formatting as kind of all, going together very well with each other. So, and this year I'm presenting about formatting. So there is a new paclet called CodeFormatter that will be generally available, but just show it so I can show you quickly an example. You can format arbitrary Wolfram language code either programmatically with kernel functions like I'm showing here, or with front-end functionality by a user interface by pointing and clicking that I'm going to show later. Lots of different options for formatting Wolfram language code, either in .wl files or in notebooks. However you have your code, you can now format it in a nice way. So this relies on the tree structure that's being returned by my other paclet, code parser. And what it can do is, return this tree structure, this AST that can then be used by other tools. But more important for formatting, it can return a concrete syntax tree that keeps white space and new lines. More importantly, if I insert a new line there, you'll see a new line pop up. Whereas here abstractly, you're just going to get +1 and 2. And so with this lower level functionality, it's possible to build a code formatter around it where you can use a pattern-based approach of first stripping out any white space and new lines that you don't care about, and then basically just kind of doing a pattern, at a high level, it's a replace of the tree structure with some other tree structure that involves the white space and new lines that you want, that the formatter gives you. And so you can think, a lot's going on under the hood, and you can think of it as having several passes similar to how a compiler works, where at the start of the process, maybe there's some sanitizing of whatever you're giving it and some taking care of edge cases and making the internal tree structure maybe more uniform so that you can work with it easier in subsequent passes. And then, you do some more passes, and maybe at the very end, you do some kind of line breaking at the very end, and you might end up with several different passes internally, and the end result is formatted code that you care about. So that's just a high level overview. So this is going to be included in 12.2, which it's in pre-release, and we're working on releasing it as we speak. I'm recording this earlier, so maybe by the time I'm even giving this talk, 12.2 will be released, but you'll be able to do this in 12.2 and get the functionality. Also, we are making it available on our Paclet server and available on GitHub. So you will be able to do this to get it from the Paclet server. I already have a local copy installed, but that's, you'll do that and it'll hit the public Paclet server and you'll get that downloaded. And you can also go to GitHub, and currently it will be joining the code parser and the code linter, which are already on GitHub, available for free to check out and build locally and play and contribute to. if you want, and it's getting a lot of good use. The linter is getting a lot of good use, and I'm hoping the formatter will soon in the future also. So, yeah, so just generally to go over kind of what people might be expecting to use as the functions here. So you can see that it's removing the white space and inserting white space where appropriate, and something more, a little bit more complicated. I think just x+1, yeah. So you can see with the set delayed, it inserted a new line and indented the code. So, you know, it's aware of indentations and new lines and stuff like that. So you might be wondering, you know, it's only strings that I've seen so far, but you can give files. This is an example file that I've been playing around with a lot because it's nice and big and, you know, has lots of opportunities for formatting. You can give code format function a file object and do the exact same thing. I'm going to cross my fingers. I'm going to delete this output very quickly, but this is a very large file. I'm going to scroll and like not spend too much time. I'm going to delete this output now. But so formatting files works just the same as formatting strings. It doesn't modify the file or anything. There will be an export function later, but this is a purely functional type of functionality. So exporting will come later. And yeah, it deals, if you are worried, the parser and the formatter deal just fine with syntax errors, but hopefully, you know, you won't be running into too many of those as you are formatting your code. But if there is one, it can format your code, and you know, and everything is fine. It's the parser and the formatter are very robust in that way. So, but hopefully it doesn't have to, you don't have to worry about that too much, hopefully. Right. So that's largely the kernel functionality. And I'll go back and explain a little bit. I'll explain some more details later, but I wanted to also show you the front end functionality. So I'm going to open the .m file that I was just showing in the front end package editor. And you're going to see that there is a new button in the package editor here called Format Cell. And I'm going to let you guys figure out what that does. It formats cells. So you can select a cell. I don't even know what a good example would be. I'm just scrolling through. So you can select a cell bracket and say Format Cell, and you can see that it changed things. I'm going to hit undo now. So that's the original cell. I'm going to hit Format Cell again, so you can see what the difference is. It's hard to show diffs interactively like this, but you can see that. You can select all cells and also do the button, and you can see down in the lower left-hand corner, it's making progress. And it'll format all the cells similar to what I just showed with loading the file there. So I don't have a diff. I'm not going to show like diffing, you know, for every single cell, but yeah, so it formats all the cells. I'm going to hit undo. So, you know, it's back to the original format. And I'm going to show you also there might be more settings and things that you want to play around with. And so there's a palette that provides some more functionality for you to manipulate and change. Let me just pick some cell. So you're here, format selected cell does the same thing as the button I was just showing you. So more importantly, there's a slider here called airiness, and I will just show you, and you see it set in the middle here. I'm going to crank it all the way to the left, and you'll see that the formatting of the cell kind of evaporated and kind of turned into freeze-dried kind of. It lost all the new lines and it lost a lot of white space. And then if I crank the slider back, it's the original formatting. And if I crank the slider all the way to the right, you'll see that it's now taking up a lot more space. And so airiness is the name of this setting that is adding indentation and new lines in a way that is a setting that you can easily change that, I mean, you know, it's airiness is just the term that is being used, where hopefully adding airiness might have a sense of increasing readability and increasing ease of processing, maybe, you know, programmatically, but whereas the decreasing airiness might make it more, you know, compressed for, I mean, you know, we're talking about there are better ways of compressing your code, but if you wanted to have everything on one line, for example, you can reduce the airiness as a setting and, you know, and get what you want in one nice continuous, you know, in just this, like this one setting that you can change to your taste. So I'm going to set that back just so it doesn't get too weird, but yep. So like there's a specter, so I don't even know if I'm setting it to the original value or not, but and so yeah, so you can see that there are tabs. You can say, you know, tabs and spaces. We're not I'm not picking and choosing, you know, one or the other. You can change that, and you can change the tab width as well. So and then hopefully you'll always just want to, this is just the reparse boxes before formatting is just kind of a error handling that you probably never need to worry about, unless if you go in, so I just unformatted a cell. If you go in and change this box structure and you're not careful, it's possible that you can create syntactically incorrect code, and the boxes themselves need to be, you know, reparsed before formatting. So just as a precaution, I've left, that's a checkbox. So, but hopefully you never need it, you know, kind of thing. So, but yeah, so that's the front end UI functionality. Nice, easy to use, just, you know, clicking. You can actually just have your cell cursor. You can just click in the cell and do format cell. You don't have to select the cell bracket. So that's nice and easy. So yeah. So just to get back, there are some options for the formatter, and they might be what you would expect them to be. I will just have some simple code here. For example, you can provide the string that you want to use for indentation. Let me just give the other example. You can see I'm providing the string that is being used for indentation. However, you know, so the very next thing you might want to try is, well, I'm already using X, you know, something funny, but it's very important. You can go in internally and take this checking out, but I advise you not to. If you treated the indentation with the string of characters QQQ, you're now changing the meaning of the code. So the formatter is very careful with preserving semantics, and nothing that you ever format is ever going to change semantics. So this would be the easiest thing in the world to actually change the semantics. So there's a check that prevents you from successfully doing that. You can go in and disable this if you really want to, but you have to look for it. I'm not going to show you. So white space and tabs and new lines and stuff, you know, go here. That still preserve the semantics of the code that you gave. So there is also line width. That is an integer and not a string of characters. So yeah, I think the options, the default is 78 columns, because that is a nice number specified in RFC for sending internet messages as a should follow minimum type of default. And a lot of other formatters around, you know, 80 characters and stuff may or may not be including new lines. So default line width of 78, but just for ease of examples, I'm going to set it to 20. And so, yep, so I'm just going to have a silly function here that's going to line wrap. And yep, so you can see it's line wrapping, you know, based on the line width that you just gave it. Whereas if I gave it a bigger one, it's not going to line wrap the same. So you can play around with that if you want. So I think that's good. And to be clear, the paclet, the CodeFormatter paclet is under development, and we'll be adding possibly more settings in the future. But you know, indentation, string, and line width are very good starting options to play around with. But I envision more specific options in the future. So, right, philosophy. You might be wondering about what the CodeFormatter is, what its goals are. And one of its explicit non-goals is to ever change what expressions look like in the way that you might think that these are equivalent expressions, for example, but the formatter is never going to convert the square bracket version, you know, to the @ version. That is preserving semantics. You know, this is the same expression, but this isn't formatting. This is something else. I don't have a good name for what this is. Right here, you might think that it's minifying, for example. This is minifying in this one case, but in general, there are lots of different ways of writing the same expression, and the formatter is not going to play that game of, you know, like using tildes and @ and / or anything like that. It's going to retain what you gave it. And so there might be some tool, a different tool in the future that allows you to more interactively transform your code. And I think, you know, that would be fine. But for a formatter, it needs to be intuitive and not, you know, the principle of least surprise is what people talk about a lot. So, right. And so you might expect, so in Wolfram Language, if statements, for example, sometimes they can get very large. People talk about the desire to ever insert little comments saying else, you know, for the else branch. But the formatter is also not going to be inserting, you know, comments or anything crazy like that. Some other tool in the future might, you know, doing similar things for transform, but the formatter is not going to do anything like that. And similarly, converting, you know, and you might think that this could format as you know, as that. These are the exact same expressions, but the formatter is not going to do that. Some other tool may, but this isn't what the formatter is going to be doing. And then, yeah, just other examples like that with double square brackets, things like this, and you know, rule, for example, and stuff. Well, actually, I should say it's not going to convert the 2-character ASCII rule to the Wolfram Language character, the rule, long name rule character, all for related reasons. So, you know, formatting it's going to do one thing, and it's going to do one thing well. So, yeah, and so you might have different goals for what the formatter is going to be doing. And one thing that it will be able to do is fixing formatting issues. And so one kind of common problem that people have is writing something like this, where you might have thought that that's going to be replace all with a /dot, but that's not how it's parsed. And you know, this is actually a division. You know, the slash and the dot are not the same token. So formatting, the formatter is going to fix that for you and show you, you know, make it more obvious what's going on. the linter can warn you about this, but that's a whole separate conversation. The formatter will fix these problematic cases. It would have fixed this anyway by inserting white space, but there are other tricky situations that you can get into that are just solved by inserting spaces. So, the formatter is going to do that silently because, there's no sane reason that you would ever want it to look like that instead of with spaces in there. So the formatter is just going to do that for you. Yeah, so, and this does belong to the formatter versus some other tool. So, right. So yeah, talking about airiness a little bit more in depth. I was going to jump to that now. I can't remember if I have promoted this. Yep. So this is the default setting. And you can play around with this programmatically. And I don't think one is actually going to do, oh, never. One definitely does do something. So this is technically correct, if not off-putting, because of the levels of indentation and stuff that are being manipulated. So, I mean, actually, that looks kind of ugly. So I might fix that up soon. But the idea is that, new lines are being added between groups like square brackets, and they're being added, in the set delayed, and indentation is being added where appropriate. So yeah, the indentation might be a little bit overzealous in this case, but so anyway, but yeah, so you can play around with airiness programmatically, similar to how the slider was that I was showing you in the palette. So right, and so yeah, I just wanted to show you a few of the stylistic choices that are made. And so a lot of the control structures in Wolfram Language are formatted specially. I'm just going to make up something to, force it. I just want to force it all on one line or multiple lines. Something like that. So, if statements are formatted this way, unless they're deemed simple enough to stay on one line. And so, for example, if everything was just symbol, 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 then it stays on one line. So there's kind of like, choices going on. Other control structures like switch and which. You can see, multiple layers of indentation going on here, and similar with which. Maybe I don't need to show the which, but with syntactic, with incorrect, I'm going to give which an extra argument just to see how it formats it. So yeah, I mean, this isn't how you would write a which statement. It has one extra argument, but it's still doing its thing. It's still doing its best. So it still does get formatted. I think function, a lot of the control structures have special rules, for formatting, especially. So yeah. But generally it tries to retain the new lines that you give it originally. So let's see if I can reproduce this. If you give it, yeah. So the white space is redone, but the new line that you gave it is preserved on the assumption that you want it to be there. There might be more options in the future for, completely redo this expression from scratch. ignore all of my new lines. And, you know, it's just, it's a series of tweaks and finding out what styles people want. And maybe there'll be a special rule for lists in the future where, you know, their lists themselves are formatted specially when they're just out in the open like this, and not just, you know, variable lists or something like that in argument or in module. But yeah, so as it is, the formatter tries to preserve the new lines that you gave it as much as possible. And so if that's ever found to be wrong in some case, please let me know. And this is under development, and I'll be fixing it shortly. So, but yeah, so it's a very general tool that you can use. You can use programmatically, you can use through the front end, and that you can incorporate into your daily workflow of authoring code. You know, it's possible to, you know, hook up to other tools, hook up to your IDE or your, you know, however you push your code up to the internet, pre-commit hooks or whatever, you know, to format your code beforehand. And yeah, hopefully it'll get a lot of good usage. So the future, there are definitely more things to be adding in the future. One thing I want to work on is internal alignment of lists and associations, where you want to align based on the commas in the list or the commas in the association, for example. You want to preserve that formatting. And also in the future, working on a syntax for comments that you can have in your code for disabling the formatter. You know, let's say you have some table of values formatted in some super unique way that the formatter is never going to be able to understand, that you want to preserve. You don't want the formatter to touch. And so a syntax to just have comments saying, you know, don't format this chunk of code. So you know, we're working on that too. And yeah, so there might be more rules, more specific rules in the future, specific rules for scoping constructs, especially, and different stylistic choices where there might be a system in the future where you can choose, I want my code to be formatted in this style or this other style, which will be a collection of option values that you can just apply directly. You know, the ideal of styles for formatting being explored as well, because not everyone's going to agree on one particular style, as I've already been finding out. But I want to make it usable by everyone, even if they don't agree on the particular style going on. So yeah, just in the name of formatting, some kind of formatting is better than no formatting at all, I think. So right, so yeah, so please send me suggestions for the future, and come to my Code Tools talk, my Code Tools workshop at 2:00, where it's just going to be an open kind of session where I can talk about, I'll talk about the parsing and the linting and the formatting, and taking questions and suggestions from everyone watching. So yeah, please do that. And thank you. And I hope to hear from everyone in the future. Thanks.